Hey guys, finally we are back with another review of, again, Defecto. So, previously I reviewed the album Nemesis by Defecto, which is the second album they did. And to sum up what I thought of that, the band was very good. The guitarist did amazing solos. They're both very, very, very good with the solos. The songs were pretty damn diverse. The singer was incredible, and I gave it an 8.5. It was a really, really, really good, solid album. So I'm reviewing Defecto again, and today it's going to be Excluded, which is the first album they did. For some reason I'm going backwards, but that's just what I'm doing. So what was their first piece of work like? So starting off, the first song is the title track of the album, so Excluded. This starts off with a pretty decent groove to it. It takes a while to build up, actually, so it has the synths that they usually have and the keys and everything, but yeah, for the most part, it's the heavy chugging guitars. They play with the 7 strings, and it kind of chugs along with the kind of orchestral grand key sounds going along with it. And eventually, you get to the actual singer coming in, and the keys kind of disperse after that, so it's mostly the band doing the kind of heavy chugging along with the vocals. His voice is a bit more open here. It's not as dry and as direct as it was on Nemesis. It's not massively open, but it is more open compared to what he was like on the album Nemesis. The chorus slows down a fair bit, so it slows down. It's very eerie, quite dark sounding, which kind of goes along with the overall vibe of the album, as well as the album cover, which is pretty much blackness with a kid just sitting in a very, very open looking room in the dark. So the chorus is very slow. It's still heavy, but it's just slowed. It's very eerie, very dark, creepy type of tone they got going to it. Another person who reviewed the album, he personally wasn't keen on this slow part. He thought the drastic change from the kind of heavy chugging kind of beat of the verse going to something this slow was a bit drastic, maybe. But I really like the change. I think it's really, really good. Not saying my opinion is right and his is wrong. This guy is in my comment section for pretty much every single video. We talk a hell of a lot. I really admire his opinions. He has great opinions and great thoughts. I really, really do value his opinions. So you should look up his review as well if you want to see the kind of subtle changes. He goes under the name Daniel Jackson, so if you just type in Defecto Excluded Daniel Jackson, you probably find him. Yeah, you should definitely check him out, because he's a lot better at reviewing albums than I am. And he reviewed this, obviously, as well as Nemesis, and he has some slight changes in opinions. So yeah, definitely check him out. But yeah, basically he didn't like the slowness of the chorus. He thought it was a bit too slow, a bit too much of a gap difference, something along them lines. Personally, I like it because of the massive gap difference. You get the heavy chugs, and then you get something really drawn out and extended, which is a massive change of pace, which I take as a type of progressive style. It's completely new. It's a completely new pace set, and it's a new kind of vibe. Like before the verse is still dark. It's a constant vibe throughout the whole album. It is dark sounding, but it's a heavy, aggressive beat. then it goes to very open and dark and eerie. So it's a whole new kind of dark vibe feeling and pace. And I like it because it's a massive change of pace. The solo is just done by the one guy, because sometimes they do the dual solos, but it's just the main lead guitarist, Frederick, who does the solo. It's a pretty lengthy solo, and it goes along with this song. So it starts off pretty in your face, aggressive and intense and fast. But around halfway, it slows down and it gets very dark, very eerie sounding, the solo, very melodic. So it's a complete 180 to how he started it, just like the song's verse is completely different to the chorus. The verse is very heavy in your face, and then the chorus is very eerie and slowed. While the solo starts fast-paced and in your face, and then it goes to very eerie and very mellow, which I think is great. The solo is really, really, really good. Then you get to When Daylight Dies. Now this has an even more kind of groove to it than the song of Excluded. The instruments are definitely going at a very nice grooving type of tone. It is again a thick sound due to them 7 strings. I also believe the bass player plays how many? 6 strings, because in one of the music videos I see him playing 6 strings, which obviously is a lot of strings for the bass. So there's a lot of heavy bass kind of sounding notes being played, because that 7th string is the low string of a bass, and then a bass having 6 strings, it's a lot of bass. So basically there is always a very fat, thick sound throughout the whole sound of the album. Excluded had it, and When Daylight Dies has it. So even though there's a really good groove going along to it, it's very modern sounding, very metal and everything, and everything. They do some bends and everything, and sometimes I think a pinched harmonic in the intro part. Before the singer comes in, they do the typical one guitar cuts out while the other guitar still keeps going. And then the singer actually does come in. The voice is still kind of open, but still quite aggressive in the delivery. It sounds good. The pace is going fairly well and nice. Now the chorus is quite bright in sound. It's bright, it obviously goes to a more musical pace. That is a typical thing with Defecto. They're very, very heavy, but when it comes to chorus, they like it to be very, very catchy, very, very nice and pleasing sounding. And that's the way with When Daylight Dies. The chorus is very, very bright, very pretty kind of sounding. It's still dark, as I said, but it's definitely bright and dark at the same time. And very musical. It's a really nice sound, very memorable. Then it goes back into the verse, leading back to the similar chorus. And the solo for this one is quite showing off. There's a lot of whammies and a lot of bends here. It's sort of in a fast pace, but not to a massive extent. So basically it's a pure metal solo with a lot of whammies, a lot of bends and everything, a lot of them really weird eerie noises, basically, to go with the overall feel of kind of dark and eerie, which is sprinkled throughout the album. He does a bit of shred from here and there, but it does kind of stay at the mid-tempo kind of range, and then sometimes he'll speed it up and then do the type of eerie whammy sounds and bends. But the solo again lasts a fair while, and it's a very solid solo yet again. Now You Had It Coming starts up mostly with the drums going at the fastest pace. The guitars are strumming out in a fairly bright manner, but not doing much. And then eventually you get the keys coming in, and then the guitar's doing dun dun dun, dun dun dun, and it's very heavy, dark sound, and the keys are obviously giving it a bit more height to it, so the guitar's the very aggressive dun dun dun, while the keys it's dun dun dun, like a horror film kind of what you hear if someone's being stabbed type of sound. When the vocals come in, this is where the screams kind of become a thing. So you have some very, very deep screams, and but it doesn't last long. It's just a few words, and then the singer comes in, and it's very, very, very mellow. It's actually his most open he has been in this album for his voice. And then he'll say a few words, then it goes back to the very, very deep growls for a few words, back to the singer, very, very mellow, very open in scope. And then it goes into the chorus, which is a very, very nice sounding chorus. His voice is unbelievably open. He does some pretty long holds on certain words. And then in certain areas he keeps the whole thing flowing. But his voice is very open. He ends the chorus back with the screaming. Not as dark and gnarly, it's a bit more in the foreground. When it gets back into that second verse and his deep growls, you get a bit of a whittle on the lead guitar, so a bit of a shred part. But then it's mostly the same, but there is leads constantly doing a bit of a whittle at the start of this second verse. And then after that, it starts kind of fading back into what it was in the first verse. Then you get back into the chorus, nothing really different there. But then after that, it goes to complete singing and open as per usual. So he's just singing, it's open, it's bright, it's still a dark, eerie sound. The solo, though, is nothing really there. The solo's pretty bland, but only at the start, because it seems quite repetitive, but it seems that is the solo. So it starts and there's some speed there, but it's a bit quiet, and it's just kind of being repetitive. But then eventually it does kind of erupt into insane speed, like probably one of the fastest, if not the fastest, I've seen this guy play. It's very, very quick, and it lasts for a fair while. It's definitely shorter than the previous two, but this is basically just completely in your face, unbelievable shred. And that's pretty much it. Drifting into Blackness, the band don't really start this. This is a piano start. But again, it's very creepy. It's like horror vibe, this. When the band actually comes in, that piano completely disappears. You still get your orchestral kind of sound with the keys in there. Throughout while they start the song up. The lead singer here has a kind of effect on his voice. It's it's an effect that kind of puts his voice down in the mix, and while the instruments are actually more louder than he is. You can still hear him very fine, but his voice is lowered in the mix, and it's new. It's a new way of singing. It's a new kind of effect I've not heard him do before. So it's very nice to hear. It's it kind of sounds like he's in a big room as well. So it's quite echoey. Like there's a lot of space and there's a lot of echo off the walls when he's singing his lines. But there is another effect there also, given another thing to it, which I can't really explain. but that pretty much is constantly persistent through the whole verse. Then you get to the pre-chorus. The pre-chorus, the effect disappears, but then the actual chorus is unbelievably open. Again, his voice is very open and everything, and it goes. It's pretty well hauled. He doesn't really keep it flowing. He holds his words. It's very open. The solo, though, is not really much of anything, really. Because I don't even think there actually is a solo. I know there is a solo, but it's not really doing much. It's kind of a repetitive pattern. It sounds nice, and there is changes, but overall it's a bit samey. And it's short. The pattern kind of stays consistent for a while, and then there's a bit of a fiddle, and then he ends it. So there is a few changes, but overall it's quite short. It's quite repetitive. It's a bit weird. The final transition is a melodic. Now, in my previous review, Nemesis, the melodics, it's pretty much, it's all piano, and then it's the vocals. That is about it, which is not enough. It gets too repetitive, it's too samey, it's too dull. There's nothing really there. So this being their first album, and Nemesis was the improvement, what am I going to think of this? So the final transition starts with piano. Again. But there's some violins, I think. I'm not entirely sure if it's a violin. It may be. There is something there. It's a bit bigger in sound, actually, because it's darker and because it's a more open sound, giving you that dark emptiness kind of feeling. It is new. It does already sound different compared to what was on Nemesis, and it makes it feel a bit bigger in scope because of how they're using this. So even though it's pretty much the same, but there's a different vibe here, this vibe works more in line with it, because it's just pianos and vocals in Nemesis, but it's dry and it's direct. As for in Defecto, it's open and it's eerie, and it gives you a sense of emptiness, which kind of plays a lot more to it. It's still not something you should really kind of write home about, but it is better, which is kind of weird. But his voice, very, very open, very clean, it soars to an extent, actually. It's very nice. But the most important thing to say about this song is that the chorus, for one, does pick up, and the band does kind of come in. The drums are there, the guitars are there, so it adds a bit. But it's still very, very slow. It's the same pace. It's just the band is playing now. But after that chorus, there's a solo. In Nemesis, the melodics they did, the two, or was it just the one? Actually, I think it was just the one. But the one, there was no solo. Here we actually get a solo. So in Nemesis, all the diverse solos and everything, they never actually played a solo to go along with a pure melodic song. So this is a pure melodic, and they're doing a solo. So how are they going to do it? It's blues, which wasn't exactly in Nemesis. There were subtle hints here and there of a blues feel and style, but it was very subtle. This is pure blues. And it's not what I've heard from them before. And because that's the case, why did they not do this in Nemesis? It sounds very nice, but I still have a nitpick with it. It's too bloody short. It hardly lasts. It's more kind of like an interlude leading from the chorus back into the riff. It's not like it's actually standing as an actual solo, which is frustrating as all hell. Because they've never done a blues solo before. This was it. This was the first blues solo they've done. And they didn't play to it. Like, I know you're more metal based, but that's another grand reason why you do a blues solo, because it is going to be completely different to the overall sound of you, because it's blues, not metal. A metal shreddy solo, a metal melodic solo, it's metal, it's blues. That is really different and diverse. You should have played on it. I appreciate it's there, and I appreciate the vibe that this song has to it that makes it better, in my opinion, over the Sacrifice that was in Nemesis. And I do like the solo. The solo was very good, and the fact that I wanted more should say that the solo was good, because I wanted it to keep going. So overall, it is pretty good, but it's not really one of these really special melodic songs you hear and you actually want to listen to yourself personally. It's just if you're listening throughout the album and it comes on, you will listen to it and you will get some sort of enjoyment. As for with Nemesis, when you come across the Sacrificed, it's pretty much, I'm just waiting for it to be over. Which, you shouldn't really feel like that, really. So the next track, Rage. Now, Rage is a pretty interesting one, because it starts eerie again without the instruments. It's kind of the keys again. And then all of a sudden you get the band coming in all at once, with the keys still going. And it's more key heavy, it's not as dark and brooding as the previous songs. But when it gets to the actual verse, everything cuts out apart from the vocals and the bass. And this has never been done before. So this is again a whole new thing. Now, hearing him groove along with just the bass and everything is a really nice sound. His voice works really well with that bass, and it's a very groovy and it sounds really nice and it's really pleasing, and it's just like, wow, this is interesting. My focus is back because this is new and has piqued my interest now. So that goes along. The guitars do come in now and then just hold, so they fade while the bass keeps going, but you can still hear the guitar because it's basically feeding out the whole time on the last note they struck. And then the drums kind of keep coming in. And then obviously as you get closer to the end of the mid-range of the verse, the whole band comes in. But that bass part, again, was really, really nice, and I really enjoyed hearing that. Now, the chorus, again, is quite a new style I hear from them. It's open, but it's not eerie, so it's an open sound that Nemesis has never really touched on. Excluded has touched on it, but the openness has always been quite dark and brooding and eerie sounding. But the chorus here, it's not really dark or eerie or brooding. It's just an open sound, which still gives it a bit of diversity. So I enjoy hearing that as well. Now, as it goes back to the verse, it loses the complete bass line. The entire band are now persistent in the whole thing. So the verse is, to an extent, different. Then you get back to the chorus, and then after the chorus, you get screams, basically, which, again, not too much. It goes to and from the screamer, so it's the singer to the screams, back to the vocals. And eventually, after that, you get a more mellow singing style. And then that leads into the solo. Now the solo here is, again, nothing really interesting. It's how to really say this. it doesn't last long. It's short yet again, and it starts quite slow, and then it kind of gets a bit sped up, but there's nothing really to it. Like, it's not got the heart to it. It's not got the emotion in there. It's not got really intriguing techniques. It still sounds good. Like, the guy is talented, and he plays it. It's talent. It's good. But it's too short. There's not enough technique there, and there's not enough emotion put into this. So, again, it's nothing that special, unfortunately. Desperate Addict is again quite a dark and eerie type of vibe to it. As per usual, the solo, again, there's not much to it. Basically, throughout this album, the solos are not really they're not as good, and they're not as diverse as they are on Nemesis. Nemesis, you get a wide range of their solo styles and techniques and vibes and all sorts of things. There's a lot to the solos. Here, the solos are short. They're lacking emotion. Usually what they do is go for speed and or the mid-tempo, and that's about it. It's still great talent and everything, but there's not much to it. But Desperate Addict, it goes back to that very heavy, thick sound, dark, brooding, kind of eerie. Now the verse, the way his singing style is, it's really creepy. It's open, it's bright, but because the instrumentation is so thick and so dark and aggressive, and his voice is kind of that open, kind of bright, not bright, but sort of bright vibe to it, and he's kind of going along, kind of slithering along the top of that thick, brooding sound. It's a very creepy sound, and it is very, very dark. It's very, very, very eerie, and his voice is very open, but it's obviously a great sound. It's a quite new kind of feel that they've got going. They have a pre-chorus that kind of tightens it up again. Still very eerie. But when it gets to the chorus, it gets quite bright, actually. The kind of thick and eerie sound pretty much disappears pretty much fully. You get a lot of keys, dun, 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 and it's quite bright, and then he kind of bobs along to it. So it's again another kind of 180. It's a complete weird change. But again, I kind of like it. I think that guy I referred to previously, Daniel Jackson, in his review, he thought it should have been completely dark and creepy. As for, I always like the two different tones playing against each other, because it keeps it changing, and it keeps it evolving and diverse within the one song. So that's personally how I feel. So even though it's bright, and it's actually a very bright chorus compared to the other choruses that they've done, and it's quite nice, and the keys are very heavy in this, like they're very, very up there in your face, but it's a great sound. And then as the chorus finishes, back to like the complete breakdown, holding really thick, fat sounds, going back to that really eerie, fat, aggressive sound. And it keeps my interest going, because it's going in all sorts of directions. It's quite great, really. I think quite genius. And then obviously you get back to that really bright, kind of upbeat, kind of like you can get up and dance to it. It's quite nice. And coming off of something really dark and really eerie and extremely creepy, it's really kind of intriguing how I think personally it kind of works together in a great harmony. I really like this. The solo, the solo here is actually a bit more interesting. There's a lot of weird noises. There's again obviously the shred. That's usually where he sticks with. It luckily actually lasts longer than what he has been doing recently, so this is now going back to a pretty lengthy solo. So maybe there's two guitarists, because seeing that it's actually longer, the two guitarists may be playing. I'm not sure, but that could be a thing. But it starts off with a lot of weird, unique sounds being played, and then it goes basically to the shreddy stuff. There is a break somewhere there, but then it's basically back to the full-on shred. So again, nothing extremely special. I like how it started, and then I like it goes to shred, but I want something else instead of just a lot more shred as per usual. But I like the length, so I actually get a nice solid length solo, and that weird sounds at the start interesting. And if you like shred, more shred, basically. Don't lose yourself. Just starts with the one single guitar, I guess, and then the drums come in. And then from there on, you get the rest of the band coming in. It's not overly thick, it's not overly aggressive. It's the kind of mid tone. It's grooving along, gets a very nice pace. And when the vocals actually come in, it's very open. The way his voice is flowing here is actually very good. Like, this actually is probably one of his best vocal performances. The way his voice actually is playing along with the pace and everything of the verse and the instruments, it's very, very well done. And the pre-chorus, his voice gets unbelievably bright and open, and it's a very nice sound there from him. It's really bright, it's really unique for him and different, and I've never heard anything like it from him, so it's very nice. And then when you get into the chorus, it's back to his normal open voice, and it's singing along. It's very bright and nice. You get some screams in there to give it that bit of punch to it, but it's flowing along. The under instruments are doing a bit of shred under there, and then it ends on the scream, as then it goes into the kind of bends and groove sound that leads back into your verse, which is that really nice paced, really great sounding verse, leading back into that pre-chorus where it goes incredibly bright and everything, back to the chorus, which then ends on the scream again. After that, you still get them bends and everything. The solo, it's a lot of holds, a lot of bends and whammies, and yeah, the shred lasts not long in the slightest. It's maybe around 7 seconds in length. So you get a lot of bends and everything, maybe some slides, a bit of whittles, and that's pretty much it. And then after that, it's a bit of a clean kind of guitar sound with some cymbals hitting on the drums, leading into the chorus. But the solo comes back for the chorus. Now, the chorus, obviously, it's all playing exactly the same, so the singer's there and everything, with everything going on, but you have the solo. It's hard to really hear the solo because of the vocals and everything, so I'm not really hearing it to its fullest that it could be. But because I got that bit of a solo, and then I get this added to the chorus, which is basically taking the chorus to a new level and then just blowing it up massively, it is nice. But I would like to have got a really good, solid solo that he began with, instead of having the really big, solid solo in with the vocals. I'd like a solo where I can go, yeah, that does me for the solo, and then have a solo under the chorus, giving it that massive, grand, amazing, massive, big sound. And again, I can appreciate what I actually am capable to get out of it. But when the first part was pretty weak, and then you get a really nice actually sounding, because it's not overly shredded, it's musical to go along with that really nice chorus. But as I said, it's kind of drowned out with everything that's going on, which is a shame. It would work, but I would like a solid solo before he did that. Now we get into the song Into Oblivion, which is another melodic. This is a big one. This is 6 minutes 43. It's a pretty lengthy song. It's dark, it's eerie. The chorus, the instruments come in, and it's a really nice tone. Like, the voice in the verse is really nice. It's singing along. It's very dark. It's very eerie. When the chorus comes in, it's actually quite nice. You get a pre-chorus that has keyholes and everything, kind of orchestral, making it a bit bigger, leading into that bigger chorus where all the instruments come in, the guitars and everything, doing some intriguing things as well. And then his vocal style is picking up to go with that more aggression, but it's still melodic, and it's still dark and eerie in sound, but because it builds it up, it's gone. This is what you're supposed to do. It started off very dark and eerie and quite empty, but it had a very nice sound to it, and then it built up with a bit of keys, and then it built up into the entire band coming in, making the chorus still eerie to an extent, but it was a bit brighter and grand in scale. That's how you do it. This sounds amazing, and this is what they should do. And then it leads back into that eerie sound with subtle guitars now, and they just keep building, and there's layers all over the place, which makes the whole thing ginormous in scope. Now, the guy with the channel, Daniel Jackson, complained about the mid part of the song. It sounds like the song's ending, but it doesn't end. It just kind of stops, and then gets a kind of acoustic sound thing going on for a fair while, and it takes a while for the vocals to kind of come back in, and then it takes a while for it to then go back to the actual song. So it kind of just seems to cut out, then come back again. Now, personally, I don't mind this, because I see it as the song Ablaze off Nemesis, where the song seemed to have been completely ending, and then the guitar was all that kind of remained, but it was kind of like fizzling out. But then it kind of kept adding a note here, and then a note there, and then a note maybe here, and maybe a note over here, and then it just kept adding and adding and adding until it just erupted massively with hold and feel, and it was unbelievably huge in size. Now, Into Oblivion, I kind of got that same feeling. You thought the song was over, there was no solo, that was it. But then they kind of draw it out, then it comes back, and then eventually you get a solo. Now, this is a massive solo. I think the two guitarists actually do play on this, so the first one being Nicholas, the second one being Frederick. And they're both very, very blues orientated. It's a massive long solo, very blues orientated. Then the second part, it's blues, but it's the metal sort of blues, so a fair bit of shred put into it. But it's a solo in a melodic, and the melodic has so many layers. This is unbelievable, and I don't know why they don't do it in Nemesis. I don't know where their thinking went. It was absolutely ridiculous. I don't know what they were thinking. I don't know what they were smoking. Bloody ridiculous. So, next track, Sovereign? I'll call it Sovereign. Now, this song has very heavy keys on the intro. The band's very thick sounding again. But when it gets to that verse, it is so catchy. His singing style, it's so catchy, it's so groovy. It's probably the most accessible song on the album because of this. But man, is it fun, this verse. I love listening to his vocal delivery in this song. The chorus, the delivery is like melting butter. I don't know what that means, but it is so unbelievable. It's got this subtle screams here and there, but overall it just it's long. The instruments underneath it sound unbelievable. His voice is unbelievable. Everything here, it's just to sound brilliant. Not that that's what they weren't doing beforehand, but it's a very pleasing sound. It's very nice. It's so fun and everything. It's just amazing at the verse. His vocals are unbelievable. The chorus is just so fluid. It is so nice. I love this song. It's just so amazing. It sounds brilliant. The solo just hits you in the face completely, and it starts with Nicholas, so the singer starts it off first. Now again, it's kind of more, it's shred based. There's the bend here and there. I actually prefer Nicholas's this time round to Frederick's, because when Frederick comes in with his solo, it's the same pattern done twice, and then he does two-handed tapping, and that's basically it. So it's not as intriguing and as done up as what Nicholas did, even though Nicholas's was purely pretty much shred. There was just a bit more to him than what Frederick did. But after Frederick, there's actually a bass solo. So the bass is actually playing an actual lead, and on his sixth string. I'm not really into bass, but it's there, and it's good, I guess. But yep, that's there. And then you get The Sands of Time, which is the longest song they've done. So this is like 7 minutes or something like that. It's melodic, but it has its builds in places. There's a fair bit of screaming at one point in this song, which I don't like it. Defecto do screams always here and there in certain songs and everything, but I don't think it works here. Sometimes it works, other times it doesn't. I think it's a bit too heavy in this. I don't like it. But The Sands of Time, it actually takes a fair while for the song to even get going. Like, it takes 25 seconds for the song to actually start. It's basically just a really eerie sound, and then when it does start, it's just acoustic. With the eerie sound still going on, the eerie sound is quite, I think it's violins. And then you've got some keys, and then the guitar does fade out, but he kind of keeps coming back now and then. And then the vocals come in with the piano, and pretty much everything else is backed out when he comes in. It's basically just him and the key piano again. That's per usual. I don't know why they keep doing it. And eventually, halfway in, the drums come in, the bass comes in. Nothing else really comes in. It kind of just keeps going at the same pace. You just add the drum and the bass, and then eventually you get some of that kind of key sounds, maybe violin style. Then you get the chorus where the guitars actually do come in, and it gets into a quite big, brighter kind of sounding chorus. It's not as special as Into Oblivion. Into Oblivion was seriously something else. This doesn't really work in the same matter, but it's still the second best melodic they've done. But then it goes back into the typical verse, not really much happening to end on. But about halfway into the song, it picks up and it becomes a pretty mid-tempo thing. It's not really heavy metal. It's not as mellow as they've really had it. But around the mid-marker, you get a very lengthy scream part, and it goes on for a fair while. I like it when it's broken up a lot. I don't like a chunk, and here it's a chunk, and I'm not really a fan of it. And he does have a bit of a break for the instruments, but when it comes back again, he's still screaming. And then it goes into the solo, which is a repetitive pattern about 4, 5 times, 6 times. I'm listening to it at the minute. Yeah, it's repeated about 9 times, and then as it ends, he changes it. So I don't know what it is, but it's not good, really. It was pretty pathetic, actually, for a solo, which is kind of weird because these two guitarists are really, really good. But then it just keeps going with the chorus. It plays through twice, I think, the chorus. But the weird thing is, the solo's not finished. There's another solo at the end, so maybe it was Nicholas doing the first solo. If it was absolutely dreadful, Nicholas, I'm sorry. But at least we do actually get a solo at the end. And the solo is very good. The solo is slow. It's not all about the shred like it previously has been. Now, there is some sort of shred to it, but he does holds. There is heart to it. There is melody to it. It sings to you. It's nice. It lasts a while. It's bright. And it has shred at times. There's holds. There's emotion. It's what I know he can be. This is basically what he's become, this solo, again. Unlike the majority of the others. You can see him in places where that is what we get in Nemesis. And this is one of them. So the song, nothing too great. It's still one of the better melodics they've done. And then the solo at the end, it ends on a very, very high solo. It's a very good solo. So when it got to the end, they did end it well. And that is basically the album. So overall, hopefully my phone doesn't die now. But overall, there's not as much diversity as Nemesis. Nemesis, there was so much diversity, so many styles they were going in and out of, so much diversity with the solos, so many different styles and everything, multiple emotions and everything. But the Sacrifice was goddamn awful. Excluded, it is a new sound. It's a lot more open, it's a lot darker, it's a lot more eerie in sound. And the voice is more open, so the singing style is different to Nemesis, and the overall sound and vibe is different to Nemesis, but they kind of always stay in that dark kind of vibe and everything. They play around with it to a certain extent, so it's still progressive and the sounds still kind of evolve, but it's not to extreme levels like Nemesis does. It's basically just we're going for a dark, eerie sound that's very open, that gives you that sense of emptiness and darkness and loneliness. We're going to always play for that. But we're going to obviously play around that sort of thing. And they do. So it is diverse, but not very diverse. The solos, you got good ones, like there's a brilliant solo in Excluded, that's very good. When Daylight Dies is pretty good. You Had It Coming was unbelievably in your face. Drifting Into Blackness, even though it was very short, I liked the blues. Into Oblivion, that solo, wow. And The Sands of Time, that end solo was very, very well done. Nemesis, they're rubbish at doing melodics. In Defecto's Excluded, Into Oblivion was unbelievable. Even the other two. All the melodics, therefore, are better in this album than Nemesis. So they've gone from this album to Nemesis, and the melodics have gotten worse as they've progressed. But saying that, overall, they have gone further from this album to Nemesis and improved on the solos, improved on the diversity of the solos and the length of the solos. They've improved on how diverse they can be and all the different things they are capable of doing. But unfortunately, the melodics didn't go with them, and they didn't evolve on it. They backpedaled quite drastically. But Daniel gave this a 7, which he said it is a good album and you should listen to it. And then he gave Nemesis an 8.5. I gave Nemesis an 8.5, so basically where am I going to sit? Even though it is quite similar, I do think there is diversity to this, but not like Nemesis. And as I said, there is 3 melodics here, and they're all better than the melodics in Nemesis, and Into Oblivion was unbelievable. The solos are better in Nemesis, but you don't get a blue solo. The blue solo is in Excluded. Nemesis, you don't really get a bluesy style of solo. You really get it here, though. And then you have a whole new sound, a whole new openness to the vocal delivery and everything, and you get some cracking songs like Sovereign and Into Oblivion and things. So I'm going to give it an 8. I think this album is way more deserving than a 7. I don't think it comes really that close to Nemesis, because Nemesis does do a fair bit more. Excluded does one thing, or maybe two, better than Nemesis, but overall it's on the same, if not below. So I feel it is an 8. It is a very, very good album, pretty much great, but Nemesis is pretty damn better. So that's what I'm going to leave it as, an 8. So I wanted to do this review in about 10 minutes. It's pretty much coming to an hour, so that will be it from me. If you watched the whole thing, thank you for sticking with it. If you like, leave a like. If you want to see more from me, then please subscribe. But until then, I'll see you guys next time. Bye.